Okay. Good morning. My understanding is that there may have been some miscommunication about when the meeting was going to start. I'm happy to bring everyone on board at whatever time they think, especially if there's been miscommunication. I think we need to always be abreast of that. However, I am kind of a 9:30 gal, just to allow families the opportunity to get their preschoolers to school, get readjusted, and it is Friday. And I think Friday's kind of a different runway than most days. However, I appreciate that y'all have joined us at 9, and I got the feedback that somehow we were going to get started at 9. And so I asked Keith to make sure that we got started at 9. So I would love to hear what your perspectives are, or what your questions are, or if you want me to kind of roll you into something that I would do much more so as kind of a soft runway of where we are with District 3 at 9:30.
I'm fine with starting at 9:30. I logged in to see which one we were going to do, so I have no problem postponing till 9:30. So,
all right, I appreciate that. But again, I want to be respectful of the folks that thought we would be starting at 9. So, are there questions or feedback or information that I should give you just to be on top of where we need to go?
Hi, Michelle. This is Amy. I actually can't join at 9:30, so I'm glad that you're here. Thank you.
Of course.
I just wanted to quickly express that we're hearing rumors that Dr. Herring is going to be requesting a contract extension in December. And I just want to express my hope that that will not be considered. I have strong feelings that I think the trust that's been broken between APS and at least my community needs to be addressed before we can talk about extending her contract. I'm concerned about the hiring process for Howard. I think the last 2 hires give me great pause for the process that's currently set up. And until that's addressed, I think December seems like it's very premature. If those rumors are in fact true, I think December is way too premature to talk about any contract extension. So just wanted to put that out there, and I'm grateful for your time today. Thank you.
So Amy, I appreciate it. Will you tell me what neighborhood you're from?
I'm in Spark.
Okay, so Virginia Highland.
Yes.
Okay, and don't get me wrong. I mean, Spark has Ponce Highland and other neighborhoods. I just want to
no. Good guess,
yeah,
Virginia Highlands.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. And then with respect to, and I appreciate your feedback with what is starting to pipe up in the rumor mill. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, or where the board and the administration are headed, but I hear you with respect to what you're saying. And when you say premature, could you define that a little better for me?
I actually don't quite understand. Maybe you can explain it. In my understanding, a December contract renewal is actually an early request, because it's my understanding her contract is not even up for renewal. So that feels to me premature to request an early renewal. If my understanding is correct, seems premature. I think, frankly, I would like her contract not to be renewed at all. But I'm willing to give pause for a process, maybe a review of some sort. I don't understand all the official mechanisms, but December, there's no way I could support that as a community member, as an APS parent who desperately wants APS to succeed. I'm invested, and so I just at this time, I don't think she's the right fit going forward. I think the trust has been really broken. And frankly, I think we've been set back a lot of years. So sorry. Sorry for the Friday morning bluntness.
No, and I appreciate the second from a dad, and I always appreciate the dads coming out because that's a strong statement. And I don't mean that poorly for the moms, but the moms are kind of day-to-day engaged, and the dads listen to the moms and then step in. So anyways, that's just kind of my perspective. I appreciate your feedback.
I don't think I'm alone. It sounds like I'm not even alone on this call for that sentiment.
Yes.
I think December is these are rumors. If that is true, December is way too fast for you to get a really good understanding. You meaning the board, get a good understanding.
And I appreciate you being kind with respect to your runway of where the board needs to go with respect to renewing the superintendent's contract. I will say, and I've given this a lot of thought this morning, and I've been up, I tend to get up very early and, have issues winding down at the end of the day. But I get up really early and I think about, what to do. And this community is very important to me, the Midtown community as well as District 3. And I don't want to dismiss, Burgess and Toomer and Drew, and I want to make sure we talk about them later on. But since we're getting started earlier, based on misinformation, which is fine, I want to be really clear on my disappointment as a 15-year parent. It has nothing to do with being a board member. It's a 15-year parent, a two-time PTA president, a long time LSC Go team member, cluster advisory, like I've seen our cluster really kind of fall apart over the past 3 months, which has been very, very hard on me. And then I've had that kind of coupled with other issues, which, we don't need to talk about. It's very, very hard. And I'm sorry to see this. And what I want to say is I think we're headed in the right direction. I think our community is very hard, meaning good, meaning strong, and that we will push the administration in the right way. And I'm not going to, at this point, I'm not going to support this administration. I'm not going to dismiss them either. But we, unfortunately, as a community, have gone through some stuff that we should not have gone through, and other communities have gone through the same. I have a lot to say about that, but I'm just going to keep shut. I think we're moving forward with respect to where we need to go as a community. And I want to make sure that District 3 is well represented. And I see somebody's got their hand up already, and we're not even at 9:30. Okay.
Can I just say one more thing, and just in the spirit of being blunt? I'll tell you what I say privately as well. I think, of course, the new school is going to succeed because it's going to be through sheer parent labor. And I fear that it will succeed despite APS, not because of APS.
That's right.
This has nothing to do with you. And I feel like that is a sentiment that's being shared widely and commonly, and that's just really disappointing. I feel like APS should be partnering. And I wish that we all had that feeling. But especially as a Howard parent as well, having seen the profile of the person that was hired this year, I just don't know that this administration understands. Yeah, there's a lot to say there, but I just thank you. I thank you for your time.
No, I took, and I want to be quite frank with you. I totally agree. I think there's been, and I let me preface it with, I appreciate all of y'all who've reached out to be like, is it too much for you? Are you okay? You know, like, or, you know, and yes, this is, from an educational standpoint, the second worst year I've had in 15, my first being my first year with my special needs child, and now this being my 15th year as a parent, and as a board member, just trying to navigate what is, what is exactly what you're saying, what the community needs. And I do believe over the past, and my predecessors, well before my 15 years, I mean, I think over the past 20, 30 years, this community has actually shown what's great about community support, what's great about rallying and making things right. And I want to support that, and I try to. I've had a challenging year personally as well, and that's another conversation for another day. But when it comes to our community, we get it, we know. And I've heard some negative feedback about, you know, having Mr. Harness move over to the new K-5 and having Dr. Tony kind of take over Springdale Park. And I appreciate that feedback. I really do. However, and again, I'm not a Spark parent, but as a long-term member of this community, of the Midtown community, the Grady community, I do believe we're headed in the right direction. I think we have the right folks in place to pull us up.
I agree. I think that we have to give credit to parents and their strong advocacy for this choice. It should have been the choice in August.
Of course.
And we lost a lot of time. I think if I could write a love letter to the parents in this cluster, we're a lot. And I think we understand that. You can put quotes around involved. We're very involved parents, but with involved parents, you get parent involvement. And I think we're looking for a partner in APS, not such a fight. And this has been an exhausting, you said 3 months, but I think it's been like 7 since at least March. I mean, and I'm not even talking about the 4th, 5th Academy. So, I mean, it's exhausting that when you feel like you're fighting instead of working.
You're right. And
sorry, I don't mean to monopolize the time.
You're kind. And I will agree with you. I mean, it was 6 or 7 months ago that I made a recommendation that I thought was important for this community that was dismissed, and that's fine. We went through the process, and unfortunately we are where we are. I think the most important thing is at this, honestly, from a Michelle perspective, is yes, we still have a lot of work to do with Spark. We still have a lot of work to do with the new K-5. However, our focus needs to be on Howard, and you know what we're going to do to make that right, because we're losing ground. And as a long-term parent, and I don't mean to sound fussy about all that, but as a long-term parent, that was kind of the bridge that got us from our elementary school to our high school. And don't get me wrong, I have no issues with any parent who thinks that their child should go to a different middle school and then come back to Midtown for high school, because we are incredibly boutique and incredibly niche and incredibly nationally rated. I have no issues with any of that. However, my my goal, my wish for this community is that we want to go K-5, K-12. Like our middle and again, my middle school experience was a little different, unfortunately, than what y'all are going through. I mean, granted, my youngest went through the interim last year, but I get it. But I believe we have really strong principles that want to make sure that we're making a K-12 curriculum in opportunity that is well vetted by the community. And whatever I can do to support that, that's what I'm here for. Period.
Thank you. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
And I'm sorry, I do wear glasses and I don't see well. And I see that there's this young lady with her hand up. Is it Laura?
Yes.
Yes, come join us.
So I mean, I will echo what Amy said about, to the extent that there is any consideration of renewing Dr. Herring's contract. I would be strongly opposed to that. And I do, obviously she's lost a lot of trust in the Midtown cluster, but I mean, I don't think it is, I don't think it's just our cluster. I mean, honestly, I have yet to talk to a parent that approves of the job that she's doing. And they may be parents that we don't agree on a lot of other things, but I think the way that the transition from virtual back to in-person was handled during the pandemic was confusing and upsetting to people on either side. And I think the main thing is this issue of trust and especially transparency. The communication has just been bungled at every step of the way. And, I'm zoned for Spark. My children will continue to be zoned for Spark after the new school opens. I'm coming to terms with the transition from Mr. Harness to Dr. Tony, and I love Dr. Tony, and I just need to get used to this new idea, and I think it's going to be fine. But the communication of that was rolled out really poorly, and so I would echo that, if this issue of renewing Dr. Herring's contract is brought up at any time in the future, then I mean, I'm just one data point, but I think you're going to hear, I would imagine just from the conversations I've had that a lot of parents share that opinion with me. And I guess my question to you would be, we're letting you know how we feel about that right now. How is that, how do we effectively go about and convey that to the board at large?
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a great question. So I appreciate your feedback. And yes, and when I say yes, I very much agree and very much support. My job is to represent you as constituents. It's not what I may or may not want. And so with respect to constituents, I'm very aware of where our community is with respect to what we've seen, and very concerned, to be quite frank. Anyways, and like I said, I mean, Howard's still a major issue for me. And I respect the fact that, and I'll just be kind of frank here. I do think putting Mr. Harness in the new school is a good idea, and putting Dr. Tony as the new, and I don't necessarily know exactly how I agree with all that, but putting Dr. Tony in a position to be the new principal at Howard is somewhat fair. And again,
At Spark, you mean?
yes, I'm sorry. Yes, at Spark. I think that's somewhat fair. I don't necessarily know if I agree that well, it doesn't matter what I agree to or not agree to. I support the administration with where they want to go. And the administration is going to have to hold itself accountable at the end of the day with respect to what they do. And that holds true of Mr. Harness as the new principal at the K-5 over Emmon, and then Dr. Tony at Springdale Park. And then I hope we can figure out something for Howard sooner than later. I think that's very important. With all that said, listening to your feedback, I know where I stand with respect to where our community, again, I represent our community. I don't represent my thoughts. I represent our community. I completely understand where our community is with respect to where we're headed with Dr. Herring. I don't necessarily know where that is with the rest of the board. So I would encourage you as a parent and a constituent to say, hey, where are you with this? I think there are a lot of board members. I think we're quite divided, to be quite frank. I think that's the best statement.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I have for now.
Okay, fair enough. I see, is it Eden?
Yes, Eden, can you hear me?
Yeah, of course. Let's go.
Hi, thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for being on here this morning. I am a Spark parent and remaining a Spark parent for 3 kids. I just wanted to jump in and echo a lot of what Laura just said in regards to the process, and as we're in regards to Dr. Herring's contract, should it come up for renewal. But 2 things. One is, I hear what you're saying about you represent the community, but not your own thoughts. And I disagree a little bit, because as your community, I'd like to hear your thoughts, and I'd like to hear not just you telling us to reach out to the other board members, but I feel like it is your responsibility to do that on our behalf. That's my understanding of
great. I appreciate that. I feel as though I appreciate you. That's so great. I feel as though I've done that in the past, and it's kind of spanked me in the back.
And I hate that for you, and I'm sorry to hear that, because that's not the way that the board should, in my opinion. You all represent our district, and that's why you're in these positions. So it's frustrating to hear that's going on. I don't know how we resolve that. If there's feedback on that regard, I would love to hear it. I just want to say, as it relates to Dr. Herring, my confidence in the appointment of Dr. Tony and Mr. Harness is above 100%. They are the ones that you were bombarded with, that we were fighting for through this whole process, because they have created a community of strength and unity, and we fought hard to not rip that apart. The fact that they are the 2 leaders of these schools is the only thing that, as a parent, I'm kind of hanging on to. It's not my I'm not hanging on to anything that has come from Dr. Herring. Her maybe the appointment of these two leaders in our community is what we have, but she didn't get us here. The community got us here, and
That's right. That's right.
that's not something that she gets to continue on in this position because of. So I think that's where I'm coming from, is I have complete faith in Dr. Tony and Mr. Harness to kind of hold this together, but not in Dr. Herring. And she didn't appoint them in the beginning. We did. We asked for it. Everything that came from her was initially rescinded because it wasn't right. And I just think that sitting through all of the meetings throughout this whole process, you've heard sentiments like that echoed from other schools throughout the district, not just from ours, because we were upset about changing boundaries and things like that. There was
Of course.
every school who had disgruntled opinions about it. And I feel fortunate to be part of our community that has a lot of engaged parents. But I think that it would be important for you and for the board to make sure you're getting feedback as it relates to Dr. Herring from all of the schools that don't have as much parent involvement, because I think that they have some concerns as well that have been brought up just in smaller voices.
Or no voices.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So, gosh, I appreciate all your feedback. It was a lot. I think where I want to go is I think where I want to go is my stance as of late has always been of I want to hear your feedback. And to your point, yes, I do have my opinions. I do work hard. I tend to be an outlier, to be quite frank, from the board, because of my perspective. And I have no dismissive optics, if that's fair. And you're welcome to challenge me on what I'm talking about.
I guess, Ms. Sheldon, I would love to hear how we could support you to other board members, not just reaching out to share our concern, but to support you, to support us. Help us help you. I don't know.
Okay, you've given me something that I need to think about over the weekend. I've had a hard in Eden. We're just now getting into the 9:30 meeting, which is great. Which is, we started early, and I'm glad that everyone else is going to join us. I'll just be quite frank with you. I'm a 15-year APS parent. My eldest is special needs. For those who know, I mean, this is his last year. We got to figure out what we're going to do moving forward. The past 3 years with him, and then with respect to my first year with him, and then with respect to a board member over the past year, I mean, it makes divorce look easy. And I just say that honestly, I've had a hard road. And that's fair. And, you know, if people want to challenge me on that, and that's fair, right? That's fair. What I want to say is I do my best to represent everyone and to represent what needs to happen, not just in District 3, but across the cluster, across the district. I do my best. And if that's not okay, y'all let me know, and y'all let me know who's better than me, and heck, let's move them forward. But it's been a hard ride.
Hey, Michelle, it's Eden. I'm so sorry to hear this. That was not my takeaway. I hope that you know that was to say, hey, let's throw someone else in your seat.
No, of course not. No, of course not. No, of course not. But, Eden, I'm sorry if that's the way it came across. I apologize. All I'm trying to say is I'm doing my best. If that's not good enough, y'all just let me know.
Hey, Michelle, good morning. This is Miss Howe. I just want to say I'm very proud of you, and I appreciate a lot of the work. A lot of us do see from the outside what you and only a few other board members are up against. Sadly, you're always outvoted. And the truth of the matter is we need better representation in other spaces. I can say for you and a few others, you do show up whether people like that. You do show up, and I respect and admire your honesty about what you have been through, because a lot of us have been through the exact same thing. So keep on pushing, and we support you.
Well, Keisha, I appreciate that. Hold on. Keith, are we on with everybody at this point? Keith,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And so as people are joining in, I'm just adding them to the room. But what you may
Great.
need to do is just start over from what we discussed at the starting at 9 to catch everyone up for the 9:30. Who
no
jumped on at 9.
worries. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm happy to do that. Okay.
And also community, it seems like we've gone into the Q&A, which is fine. If board member Olympiadis, are you fine with that as well?
Oh, sure. But
Okay.
let's bring everybody up to speed real quick. I mean,
Yep.
I'm not a 30-minute foo-foo. I mean, like, okay. All right.
Yep. And so before we get started with you recapping what we discussed, community members, as always, I know we've had people to just come off and mute and ask their question, but we do want to go back to our traditional behavior, and that is raising of the hand feature. If you do have a question, so that we could place you into a queue. And then once board member Olympiadis go over her updates and things, then we will move into back into Q&A.
Okay. Whatever we need to do. Who cares? Okay. So let's back up. And just to be clear with everyone, there was some miscommunication that we're going to start at 9. So I made sure we started at 9 just to have some conversation. And if there needs to be different feedback, great, whatever. Happy to have that. A little bit of what we need to do is just make sure we're all on board. And I would love to hear what folks have to say. And let me back up. We, District 3, we're so fortunate. Mr. White, who's the principal over at Burgess Peterson, is a second time, then y'all correct me. He's a two-time principal a nominee for the APS Yes Awards, which he was last year, and I think he is again this year. And if I'm not good on that, y'all shut me down. And then we have Miss Benton from Mary Lynn, and y'all gonna have to give me a break because I gotta look this one up. I'm not gonna get her name right. It's, hold on, give me a second. Come on, Michelle. It's, come on. It's Miss, I'm not gonna get it right, and y'all correct me. It's Miss, Bishai, y'all gonna get me right. It's Everett Tumor. It's AP Everett Tumor. Y'all need to get me right. Anyways, excited.
Michelle, it's
Um,
Emily. I just call her Taruka. I was a colleague of hers. We called her Taruka. She's amazing.
But
They're
that's
all
her
amazing.
first, yeah, that's her first name. Miss Betty, I mean, that's her first name. Thank you.
Yes, it's Taruko Dabashi Taylor.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank y'all. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, that's right. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, I guess I need to move us forward. Sorry. All right. What do we need to do with respect to community feedback? I feel like there's somebody trying to talk to us that is not. Hey, we've got a hand up. Okay, we got a hand up.
Yeah,
okay,
and so
Lisa.
board member Olympia, this is Keith. So are you ready to hear from community?
Of course.
Okay, so it seems like we have Lisa with her hand up.
Yeah, let's go with Lisa.
I only just recently had something to say. My kids are at Howard, and I live in Noble Park, so close to the edge of some of the furthest distance to Howard. And I know I've emailed you about this, but today on the way, I drive my kids in the morning because our bus is so inconsistent. And today on the way, multiple times I drive back at 9:15, 9:20, and there's still kids standing outside. And the bus came, it just missed half the stops. I have no idea how many stops it missed. So, I pick up kids I know their parents, they call their parents who are probably at work at that point, confirm that they can get a ride. So then I make a second round back and that's probably happened a handful of times this year. And it just, there's gotta be, I know that there's shortages of bus drivers, but when there's a bus and there's a driver, there's just gotta be a way to make sure all the kids are getting picked up, because this keeps happening where the bus arrives at school, but has missed a lot of stops. And I've talked to transportation, or if there's a different bus collecting the route, we have the app. There really needs to be a better way of seeing if there's a different bus, seeing that bus on the app. If there's a bus driver who's not familiar with the route, that they know all the stops. Like, I just don't understand how kids keep getting missed. There's a large apartment complex, like midway through, I have no idea if all those kids got picked up. But if we're talking about attendance and really focusing on attendance, and there's just, the buses are not, we're 3 miles from the school. It's too far for some of these kids to walk. 3 miles doesn't seem like much depending on where you live, but you know, it's pretty far. So I just want to raise it again that there still seems to be, apart from this doesn't seem to be a lack of a bus driver or a lack of a bus. There was a bus driver, there was a bus. I passed it on my way back, but I also passed kids on that route still standing there while the bus was on its way to school. Had already passed them.
Okay. I think that's fair. Thank you, Lisa. Other folks, I see a lot of folks on here. Let me know what your thoughts are.
Hey, Michelle, this is Waukesha again. The meeting on yesterday, I'm not sure if it was the accountability. It was, you guys opened up, executive session, ended. That was it. How do we know as the community, taxpayers, parents, how do we know when and how you all are holding the superintendent accountable?
Fair enough. I see what you're saying. I don't know, Waukesha. Just give me a minute. Yeah, you've made an interesting point.
Okay.
Michelle, can I just chime in and add on to Waukesha's comment?
Of course.
Because we brought up some concern, or I'll say I brought up some concerns and some questions about accountability. I know other people have at meetings. Katie Howard's meeting, we brought it up at Ishay's meeting. We brought it up at a meeting that Jason, Cynthia, and Tamara were at, and we're all pointed to attend the accountability committee meeting. I think a couple of us who have attended the accountability committee meeting, said it always goes to executive session and there is no information shared out. And then you come back and then it's motion to end the meeting. So it's frustrating for Board of Education members when we're talking to them one-on-one to tell us to tune into these meetings when there is no information given to the community. So that seems like just disingenuous to say, tune in and you're going to find out information when no information has ever been shared. It seems honestly like a cop-out. And I know you have provided the most information, but it just sounds like a cop-out and a misdirection of stakeholders to a meeting that provides no information. So, and has never that I've been tuning in.
Well, I can jump in here, Dion. Sorry. Hi, guys. Sorry for joining late. This is Tamara Jones. I had trouble with my internet. I was in that meeting. And so what I can share, like to the, I can't, but I out from that. And that is that the committee is on the finalization of the evaluation tool. There is a tool. There always has been a tool. They are going to be able to share the group because the committee just has to approve it. So the evaluation tool is co-created between the superintendent and the board or the accountability committee. And so to do that, they have to go into executive session because they're talking about her, performance. Right. And so the timeline, it is coming very soon, like very, very soon. And so for people who are of the conception that there has not been a tool in the past, there has been. It does exist. The problem with it is that there's never been a forward facing portion of it that we could share with the public. And that is one of the things that the accountability committee, which I'm not on, but I sat in on, has been working to make sure that it's transparent, that there is a portion that can be transparent to the public.
I think maybe just a message like that's during the accountability meeting so that people across the district get that information.
Yeah.
Because it's in like, or some sort of formal statement. I mean, I continue to hear this question asked over and over and over again. And there's just no general, the accountability committee, I would hope, would put out a formal statement or at least address the individuals in the meeting or document something to us so that there's one clear, consistent message.
And that's one of the things that I asked for in there is that we craft, and I think that they're responding to that now, that we craft communication to that effect so that people aren't left to, make up their own story, because there's a vacuum of information, right?
Could I ask one other question?
Sure.
So this week, an executive session was called at a Go Team meeting at Spark. The Board of Education policy on student governance says the handbook is supposed to be followed. The regulation says the handbook is supposed to be followed. I confirmed with the Go Team staff that the current handbook is the one that's dated 2019. According to that, executive session is only to be had to do the principal annual review. Now, I was also told that the executive session definition on when it can be held is going to be updated, and legal is looking at that and they're making modifications for a future handbook. But the current handbook is the 2019 and clearly says that executive session cannot be used for other than doing principal annual review. So the concern from the community and across the district, and I know I reached out to you, so and many other board members as well as administration, is that the use of executive session in Go Team meetings is potentially going to be abused, and the transparency that was initially set up when we set up these charters and Go Teams is not going to be there anymore. I was given a sample language of what the new handbook is going to say, but I'm just wondering when this engagement is going to happen on this big update, because according to what I was provided, at any time, administration can come in and call an executive session for the Go Team, and there's no transparency.
That is a very good point, and I'm taking some notes. I mean, certainly we do not want executive session to ever be abused. I think that in this particular situation, they viewed the provision about the principal performance. This was viewed in my mind, and I'm not speaking for them, more as kind of a courtesy. Like it is because their principal was, and so people were not privy to this information. So because their principal was going to be reassigned, it was more of a courtesy type meeting to hold that meeting with the Spark Go Team prior to announcing it to the entire community. So for instance, if the Morningside principal were to have been appointed, they would have afforded the courtesy so that they wouldn't be, blindsided before the rest of the community got to hear it. So I think that's where they were going with this particular piece of information, but I have taken your notes and we'll go back and ensure that I know what's going on with revisions to the Go Team manual.
Right. We have approved policies for a reason. And once we start not following policy, and they said, well, we're following the law. It's when do we follow the policy? When do we follow the law? It seems like we're picking and choosing. And I can give you many examples where the law said we didn't have to do X, but then Board of Education policy said we had to do Y, and we're following that. So in addition, when other principals were removed, Go Team emergency executive sessions did not happen. Example is at Howard. So in addition, a principal was appointed without people even knowing that a principal was leaving. So again, the community at large, I can say across the district, feels like there is a concern that executive session is going to start happening across the district. And then the additional question is there were a lot of staff from APS on that call. Who was allowed in that executive session? Because there were, I mean, at least 7, if not 8. Were all of those individuals allowed at executive session with the GO team? And what sort of safe environment could the GO team speak to and speak about without intimidation or fear or et cetera?
Okay, thank you. I'm
Thank
taking.
you.
Keith, can I like?
Tamara,
Yeah.
I want to add to Dion. Dion, in the past when
Hold on,
it had
Miss
been,
Howe, Miss Howe.
yes,
Before we're gonna let you finish, but again, we do ask that you put your hand up, put your hand, raise your hand feature and let us call on you so that we can keep some type of order and make sure that we are
Sure.
doing we're doing the same practice that we do always. Okay.
absolutely, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Okay. But Dion, in the past when this don't happen, I'm a founder, Go Team member. I think back 2015, 16. The Go Team handbook, I think, has been changed maybe once or twice. I think Diane Jacoby is on the phone. But what they usually do, the associate superintendent is the one who meets with the Go Team. It is usually not that many people, as we saw on that meeting. That did seem a little intimidating, but I think maybe, the Go Team can speak for themselves, and I don't know if they were comfortable or not. But it was a lot of staff members on that particular call. A lot of people from the superintendent office was there as well. So I've never seen it be done in that manner. And I think what they could have did too, Tamara, they could have at least left us in the main Go Team meeting while they went to a separate breakout room to have that discussion versus, kind of kicking us out of the meeting and then bringing us back in. And then it's nothing being said other than check your email, your phone to see what the outcome is. The truth of the matter is we know what's going on in this district. We know there's not enough transparency happening. How long will this continue is the real question. So Tamara, please take that back. Thank you.
I will. And I know you mentioned that Diana's on the call. I don't know if Travis is on the call either, or if either one of them have anything to add or are taking some notes so that we can go back and,
Yes. Hey, Board Member Jones, this is Travis. Yes, taking notes, capturing feedback. We did respond to Dion's questions and some of our feedback and position, but we'll take the new information that we heard from Ms. Howell and Dion to get additional responses for you.
Thank you very much, Travis.
And just to follow up, will there be engagement if executive session for Go Team is changed? Or are you guys just going to change that without engagement? Because Travis, I know you saw the new language that was suggested, pretty much says they can call an executive session at any time for anything. And then the letter that was sent out by Dr. Herring after suggested that the Spark Go Team was involved in the principal selection for the new permanent principal, when we were told it was just selected, it was appointed. So I think there wasn't really a process. It was an appointment.
Yep, I'll get, like I shared, I'll send more information. We are bound by Georgia law, regardless of kind of some of the Go Team handbook. We asked our chief counsel, a subject matter expert on Georgia law and open records and open meetings, and shared that for principal personnel matters, we can go into executive session called by the superintendent, but I'll get that information so that we can share it widely with those on the call and elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So I think in the future then, and I'm going to give you this example, but there was no law to wear masks. Board of Education policy made it a policy. So in that case, you see where the slippery slope is on what law is and what policy is and when we have to follow it and when we don't. So that's the problem. It looks like APS is going back and forth and picking and choosing and modifying and manipulating things at the cost of our kids, at the cost of transparency, at the cost of culture, at the cost of health, etc.
Thank you. This is all very good feedback, because I personally believe that our structures, our institutions are the foundation, and we have to preserve them. We have to preserve the integrity and transparency of our representative bodies, our GO team. Having been on the local school council before they became GO teams, it's essential that we follow process. It's essential that we're open to the public, unless we can't be for privacy reasons. So I pledge to follow this and make sure that we are able to ensure transparent, fully participatory representation and feedback within our structures.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Engel?
Hi, I'm Marietta Engel. I'm on the Spark Go team. So I was in that meeting, Dion, and I just wanted to, the one point you just made, that in Dr. Herring's note, she said that the Spark Go team was consulted on this decision. We had problems with that language too, some of us on that on the Go team, because the meeting was really just an announcement. We had no consultation with it. So we were a little, upset by it too, but really it was just, we learned about it 30 minutes before everybody else did. So like I said, it seemed like a courtesy call, but I did also agree that I did not like that language in the letter.
Thank you. I've noted that.
Thank you, Marietta, for speaking up. That's exactly what we need GO team members to do. Thank you so much.
Next.
All right, Raina?
Hi, I am also a GO team member that was on that meeting, and I will also clarify that I did not like the language that was used in the email that was sent out, or the text message that was sent out, because it totally implied that the GO team was involved in her decision to do the move of the principals, and that's incorrect. And I think that this is a continuation of multiple times that communication has been sketchy, where what we're being told is not quite true, that we have to kind of look into it, kind of read between the lines and see what's going on. And I don't think that's appropriate for our superintendent to do. I also felt that how we were communicated with by the superintendent to the Spark Go team, the members that are representing the school and representing the parents and children and community, were not given the information in a way that was appropriate. I think that how she presented information was not good. And it also makes me wonder what she's thinking, with some of her decisions. The fact that she did not understand that this might not be the best way to give this information to us. After two failed principal situations, right? You have Howard, and then you had the entire search for this principal to then come around and basically split up our administration. It just doesn't make you feel confident in what she's doing with the school. We have issues with data points. We have issues with, what we're going to do in the future and everything that's going on. I'm not confident right now with her leadership on what we're doing for my area. I have 4 kiddos. I have 2 more that are coming into Spark after this. And I'm worried. I'm worried about my 3rd grader going into 4th grade and what's going to happen to her with Howard. I'm worried about how we're going to handle, situations, considering how this has happened within a year. The entire debacle, everything has been just done incorrectly, I feel, starting from last year when the data was given and engagement that we now feel wasn't really engagement. They just basically wasted our time when they were continuing to do the initial plan. Just across the board, I just was just not satisfied with her at all. And I do feel that her communication with the community and also even with our GO team was completely out of line when she presented that this week. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. And I thank Travis for putting into the notes that he will be relaying the comments back to the communications team and the administration. So thank you very much. Oh, and I did want to say that Michelle has had some technical difficulties, so I am running the meeting. Keith, do we have anybody else?
Yep. So I'm saying, I don't know, Dion, did you have your, are you raising your hand again or?
Yes, if that's possible.
Okay, well, I don't see anyone else with questions. And so right now we have Dion and Waukesha.
Question for you about discipline and safety reports. Where can we get more transparency on that? They did a presentation in May 2022 at the Board of Education meeting and said they had been making some changes to the discipline department itself. I know they made updates to the handbook. They provided some data in May, but we're hearing crime and discipline, just hoping we can get some more actual transparency around that and when that would be coming.
Yeah, I can ask for an update on that. I remember that presentation where they were talking about how they were restructuring the student discipline to be more supportive. And I will ask for a follow-up on what the reorg of that is looking like and how it relates to any reporting out that we're doing. I know Mr. Johnson had given feedback on wanting to see different detail within reports, and we're investigating that right now just to see how that's cataloged.
And then to add that on, we were promised engagement about safety changes that were going to be made this year or recommended. And I believe that was in the August meeting, Board of Education meeting, when Chief Applin presented, and at Howard specifically, the clear book bag thing. And then we were told if that decision is ever going to be made, there will be engagement on that. We have yet to hear anything about that, if any of those changes are going to be made, as well as the new, what do you call those, metal detectors, but not metal detectors. Are those still on board to go in January in all of our schools?
I don't know the exact details about the installation time, but I do know that we approved as a board the purchase of that equipment, yes. I will ask for the update on the installation.
Thank you. Do you know if we're having engagement on any of these other safety things that she wants to roll out that she said we would have engagement on before any big decisions are made?
Yeah, I have that as a note to ask, to follow up with her to see how that is going. And, just to make sure that if they are considering any sort of changes, that we do have significant and transparent engagement.
All right, so we're gonna move to Waukesha, and then we're gonna move to Song, and then we're gonna move to Miss Elizabeth.
Hey, thank you, Keith. Tamara, I just wanted to say, I want to give a big shout out to Travis and Keisha, because I know last year, one of the big things have been engagement. And I really can't say that they have really tried their best to step up engagement across the whole APS system overall in every cluster. It may not be exactly what we want, and I want you guys to take in account, because some of y'all serve on these different boards, the things that is happening in the city and how it will affect different families, which kind of keeps them from being involved. The transparency piece is really huge and it's key. I wish the superintendent would come back to the community like she did in the beginning and would have continued those fireside chats so she could understand our concern. And we didn't have to work up the chain of command. She would hear firsthand, how we feel about a lot of things. But I did want to just give a big shout out to them because they have been trying. And also we've been trying to connect the PTAs and I go to the Go Teams meetings. And so I do talk to Diane or Carol when some things are, not correct. So I do think we need a lot of more heavy lifting on the Go Team side. But, for the most part, I'm really appreciative of how Travis and Keisha have stepped up family engagement. So I just wanted to lift that up.
Thank you for giving them a shout out. And I just want to echo that because they really are doing an amazing job. I wonder if Travis ever goes home. It seems like I see him everywhere. So thank you so much. And, just so you know, they are really, Travis and his team are really trying to build out their engagement strategy. So their, strategic engagement plan. And I really like some of the work that they're doing when they talk about different levels of engagement, depending on the subject matter or the audience. I think it's very nuanced, and I applaud them greatly for trying to build this, and, just look forward to how it's going to turn out in the future. As far as the Go Teams, I'm with you. I really want these to, and this is me, board member, just one board member. I want these to be actual advisory bodies. What I would love for is for the Go Teams to have an actual avenue, a communication channel, the way local school councils did back before they became Go Team, where they could provide feedback, recommendations, to the administration or the board. And by law, by state law, the board or the administration had to respond to them. I think we got away from that somehow. And I'm just one board member, but I want to establish a channel whereby those bodies become actual advisory, in an official capacity similar to an NPU.
Thank you. I do agree.
All right, so we're gonna go to Song, Elizabeth, and then Lisa.
Great. Hey, good morning, everyone, and sorry for the background noise. I'm actually walking to a school event right now. But so I'm a parent, and we're still zoned for Spark, and so obviously was really surprised by the news this week. And so I think the news all of this continues to divide our community, right? I mean, we've lived in Virginia Highlands for over 10 years. And I think, now everyone, what's kind of top of mind for everyone is how are you planning to staff each of the schools, right? Or staff Inman? Because I think now what everyone's feeling is, oh, Harness has this massive followership. I mean, how are you going to handle the staffing process, the hiring process for Inman? I think that we've kind of heard like, oh no, teachers will have to, quit and reapply and that type of thing. But I think some clarity around that process would actually put a lot of parents at ease, right? Just trying to understand that, that there is an equitable process in place in terms of allocating teachers and staff to each of those schools.
And thank you. I believe that was addressed at last night's meeting for coordinating or, the kicking off the new Midtown Elementary School. And Travis probably would have more information on what the actual procedure is regarding teacher staffing. They had people there from curriculum and instruction and, other facets of the administration just to illustrate what they're doing to make sure that not just this school, but all of the schools affected by this are going to be fully staffed and up and running. And I believe I don't have the exact date, maybe Travis can help me, that they're meeting with all the affected principals and making sure they have their staff imminently. That's happening, within the next couple months, just to make sure that they're covered.
Yeah, so unfortunately I wasn't able to join that meeting, and I think Travis is on this call, so perhaps we can just get a high level overview. Because I guess what I'm wondering is it based on tenure? Is it based on, because that's what we've heard, right? Is that, oh, teachers, if they have more tenure, then perhaps they get to choose where they would like to go. And so I think some clarity around that would be helpful.
I don't to that. That is an HR question, and I don't, so I'm not sure Travis has that, on the top of his head either, but we can make a note of that we can make sure we get back to the community share what the procedures are, just so people know. Did that answer your question? I mean, I don't know. I know I didn't have answers, but yeah, I will get you in.
Yeah, I mean, and thank you for just stepping in, because I don't think, I know this is not your call to host, but it didn't really answer my question, but I appreciate you saying that you will actually follow up and get back to us on that. You know, I don't think I'm not looking for how the process will be addressed with like individuals specifically, right? So I'm not looking for that, obviously, because I know that's an HR, you know, / personnel issue. I guess what I was looking for is just some of the criteria that will be applied and what the process actually looks like.
Okay, I've got that note and I will try to get it back to you as soon as possible.
All right, Elizabeth and then Lisa.
Hi, Lizzie Wicklund. I'm a North Atlanta parent, but in District 3, and just wanted to make sure people understand as the lines change with City Council, actually District 3 is picking up more North Atlanta families as it grows north. But Dion, I had to leave early from the North Atlanta Go team, but we did talk a little bit about clear backpacks. And my understanding is at this point, the word mandate is not being used, but I think what is happening is that there is a mandate for bag checks. And so if principals decide that clear backpacks might make that process faster, they may individually choose to go that way, but it would not be what we are hearing a district mandate. And I'm guessing partly that's because we want kids to come to school. And if the district can't provide clear backpacks for everyone, they're not going to turn away a child from entering the school building if they don't have the clear backpack. But clearly with schools, particularly North Atlanta is the largest school in APS, it would speed up the bag check process if we can get more kids to have it. So it might be more of a school by school issue. I do think that I know we're looking at Jackson High School because they apparently initiated some type of mobile lockers that at the front of the school. So because of sports bags, and that kids will be able to put apparently non-clear sports bags in these mobile locker units if we do go to the clear backpack as a school policy. But we're now looking at funding that, which is tricky. But of course, if there's not a mandate from the district, then that would be our own internal problem to fund these rolling lockers that would not be a district wide. But of course, if the district mandates it, then I would think they will need to possibly fund this idea of these rolling lockers for the sports bags, which would be locked, and then kids would retrieve them apparently at the end of school. But that's all I have. And that may not be 100% correct because I had to leave that meeting early. I just wanted to give Dion a little bit of the response that I'm hearing from our high school. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Yeah, one of the things that we talked about in the budget commission meeting yesterday was, making sure that if we're mandating something that we're going to be funding, the effects of it, so that it doesn't be yet another thing that we have to pay out of our school-based allocation. Keith, who's next?
Yep, we have Lisa, Paul, and then Dion.
Tamara, this is Lisa. I want to go back to your comment that you made about making Go teams as advisory teams. And I really appreciate that. I was on the Morningside Go team for a couple of years, either right after or during when the charter, I have to go back to my timeline, when the charter was renewed. And that was where we saw a few minor changes with Go team structure. But I was disappointed at that time, and I know I emailed board members at the time about how little engagement there was with Go teams in terms of what's working, what's not working, how could they be better used. Some of what you brought up, I think, as a former Go team member, would be wonderful to have give Go team that kind of responsibility, that kind of real engagement. That's what's happening, not just at their school, but within the district. But none of that engagement happened in the last charter renewal. It was very similar to what we're hearing with the Spark. It was like, well, here's what's changed with the Go teams. I think we were told there would be engagement and we were waiting for the engagement, but it never happened. That could have been because of COVID. We never really got a good reason why it didn't happen. But I just kind of want to support, as a former Go team member, that I think that would be very beneficial, and hopefully that kind of engagement can happen transparently with the Go teams, but so the community can be involved as well.
Yes, and I think that when we were first envisioning these Go teams, as we were coming off of the local school council, that's what we envisioned. We envisioned, really empowering, the parents and the community and the faculty, within the school council, so that they would be they would have a voice in matters that affected them. It was actually something that was passed out yesterday, as, Travis and his team had a great sort of list of high impact, medium impact, and low impact engagement processes. And on the high impact one was that school councils will have an actual say in matters that are important to their school. And I think that was the original concept. It just never quite materialized. And it's very, very important. And I know that the concept of it can be frightening to administrations because they fear losing control. I'm not speaking for this administration. I'm just saying in general. But, in my experience, you do not lose control. It actually is very empowering to everyone. And, I feel like the crisis-oriented engagement that we have now is much more exhausting and problematic than any sort of, real advocacy and advisory, day-to-day, power sharing. It's just what we have now is very problematic. Oh, and to Waikisha's point, I think, not kind of the disappointment that a lot of people feel with the Go teams is one of the reasons, in my opinion, that you see people in other parts of the city who say they're just not working. And part of that, I do believe, is because they have not been given enough actual voice and enough standing. They feel like their box is being checked.
Thank you.
All right, Paul and then Dion.
Hey, thank you. I'm a Spark and Howard parent, continuing Spark parent. I agree with those who have questioned Dr. Herring's job performance and fitness for the role that she's in. I personally think she's not fit and has caused a lot of damage in a very short period of time at a number of schools. In the beginning of the call, Michelle said that she was an outlier on the board with respect to her view of Dr. Herring's performance. I interpreted that to mean that the rest of the board is happy with Dr. Herring. And then when I joined the call, I heard somebody saying something about the board accelerating a renewal of Dr. Herring's contract. I'm not exactly sure what that was, but I'm curious your thoughts on Dr. Herring's performance overall, why Michelle feels like she's an outlier, and why the board would accelerate a renewal at this time. Thanks.
The place for me to evaluate the superintendent is in the evaluation, right? I can listen to you and comment back to you on issues that are going on, within the schools and with the communication and the engagement, all that stuff, and agree or disagree, or but I'm not gonna. This is not the place for me to say whether or not I would vote a certain way. And with regard to the speeding up the evaluation, I've not heard anything about that. That's not what anybody has talked about. I mean, her contract runs through not this summer, but the following summer. So she has a contract through June or July of 2024. That's what was voted on before I was elected. The board would have to take up a renewal no less than 6 months, right? I think it's a year. Now, this is where Cynthia had to drop off. So she remembers, I think it might be a year. Yes, so I think that we're going to have to take this up by this summer, no later than this summer. So just so people know, there is not, so I think that once the evaluation tool is carried through, there's 2 months. So somewhere between February and June, I believe, based on what I know, is when that will come up again for renewal.
Thanks.
All right, Laura.
Hey, so on that same topic, and I guess I've been going back and forth between this meeting and doing some work, so I may have missed this, but when we're referring to the evaluation tool, can you just clarify a little bit more what that is? And also, my question would be, when it is time to talk about a renewal of Dr. Herring's contract, how does the board intend to engage its constituents in, and this may be connected to the evaluation tool, but how does the board plan to engage its constituents in providing feedback on our satisfaction with the superintendent?
So the rubric that they use for the evaluation will be made available. So it, not the content, from what I'm told by sitting in on the accountability committee, which I'm not on, but I sat in on it. So the rubric will be made available. I have seen it. It is thorough, and just so people know what has been going on, the rubric had to be redone because we shifted, if people remember, we shifted to student outcomes focused governance model. So that's why we've changed a little bit of our meeting format. So we're trying to focus on student outcomes. And so it was important that the superintendent's evaluation was tied to those student outcomes. And so trying to marry the tool that we had before, that we used, in years before, with the student outcomes portion of it, has been why it has been under construction for a while. It's not that there wasn't one before. It's just that we were trying to marry those two things. And so that I expect that rubric to go public, fairly soon. I would say by the holiday. I'm not sure. But it's going to be made public very, very soon so that people, well before the contract renewal is scheduled to be heard, that you will know what it is that we're going to be, evaluating her on. I mean, the public they could do their own, assessments. Now, how we as board members engage with the community around that, that's part of another project of mine, because at the moment, every board member sort of engages their constituents the way they want to, right? In my mind, something that was a little bit more predictable would be helpful for the community so they know where to find us, where to expect us to show up. I personally try to go to all of the cluster advisory team meetings so that I know, what's going on. Those would be, I would really hope, I've noticed that they're very poorly attended these days. I mean, there's almost no community that comes to them. I'd like to change that. I mean, I'd really like people they're public meetings. So the public is entitled to come. The public can speak at those meetings. So I think those are good forums to have these conversations. They're subject to open meetings and they're recorded, right? They're recorded and notes are taken. And so as far as your feedback, like giving feedback, those public meetings where they're open records and notes are taken, that's where to put your feedback in addition to just calling us on the side, right? So please take advantage of those.
And when you talk about the rubric, I mean, is that who fills that out? Is it just the board members, or who's involved in filling out that evaluation?
I'm going to have to lean on somebody who is on the accountability committee, because not only am I a new board member, I'm not on that committee. So I've never done that before myself.
Hey, board member Jones, this is Pierre. So the rubric is completed by the board because it's their role to evaluate the superintendent. And so all board members will have an opportunity to complete that evaluation, but it's their role and their function to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I also just wanted to add into just the feedback piece. That's the purpose of these meetings that we're hosting now, for board members to hear from community. We also have the opportunity, this is more two-way conversation, but at board meetings, we have the public comment portion. You also have access to Let's Talk. We do read all of those dialogues that come through. And so you have the ability to contribute that way. And then of course the board email address, which is the Atlanta Board Education, and we can get that out to you as well. So you have multiple ways to inform your representatives, your board on your feedback so that they can take that into account when they're doing the evaluation, but it is the primary role of the board to evaluate the superintendent.
Thank you, Pierre.
Mm-hmm.
But do know that you will be able to see the rubric that we are going to be filling out, and you could do it yourself, and say, how would you, rate these things? It's pretty detailed. Do we have anybody else, Keith?
I see Elizabeth with a sideways hand.
Oh, I didn't mean to be sideways. Hey, just Pierre, can you, on that note, just help us understand a little bit better, because obviously we have new board members who were not here when the superintendent was evaluated in the past. Are they given the previous rubric or whatever, so that they can see what areas were identified as areas that needed progress in previous years, so they can kind of compare that?
Pierre?
I'm sorry, I thought I saw your head moving, Tamara, so I didn't know if you were jumping in on that. Yes, board members have access to review that information, but again, the purpose of this evaluation is to evaluate the superintendent for this academic year that's just passed, which most of them have. I guess they came in the second half of it, but they have had, they do have access to that information. And because it is a personnel matter, the content of that they do have access to.
So can Tamara confirm that she's been able to have access?
Not looked at it.
You've been offered it, but haven't. You know how to gain access?
How to gain access to it, yes.
You do know how to gain access. Okay, that was my question. Okay, thank you.
And I just want to add, and I guess this is my role, that I can kind of just jump in as a system of protection to just board members. Superintendent, although it is, we have allowed stakeholders to provide comment because, at public meetings regarding the superintendent, just that information because of the role. But again, because it is a personnel matter, that's the reason why it gets very iffy and shaky, because again, legally, the board is not allowed to have those conversations. And so I do just want to say that on behalf of board members, it's not that they're running away from questions in regards to it. I think the best place or the best opportunity that stakeholders actually have at this time is just to provide that feedback so they can take that into consideration when they're making it. But I do know that it gets a little iffy, it gets a little tricky in responding, but it's that way because legally, the content of the evaluation, asking them, the details of how they would go, and that's it. It's tricky to respond to that in this instance, just from their duties. And so I do just want to say that out loud, that I don't think anyone is avoiding the conversation. From a board member's perspective, it's just a very tricky space to be in their roles of how they evaluate their employee.
Yeah, I don't mean to jump over Waukesha. I don't think that's the issue. I think the community, you know, and all of people are aware. There were two times that once when there was not put on the agenda to re-extend someone's contract when when the public's understanding was she had had a favorable review. So the public was very questionable about like what is the value of a review if a favorable review leads to not an extension? And then separately, more recently, there was an extension when the public felt like it was put on the agenda very quickly, and the feedback. And so the public, I think, is concerned that extension or not extension, either, both of those, we've been in a position before when the public felt like they weren't informed, even though they had read everything that was publicly available, to kind of what was going on, to being able to see the big picture. So I think that's obviously the greatest. I don't think this is a surprising comment, but that particularly when the extension was placed on the agenda rather rapidly, and many community members did not know or notice that had been placed on the agenda, and so people are now more aware of that possible scenario, and that yes, you would have, I think it was posted on a Friday and voted on a Monday, so that did not give the community much time to give their elected representatives feedback. So yes, I think no one expects to see the actual completed review. That's really not so much the question. It's about, anyway, that's just my comment.
Yeah.
So noted.
Was somebody else saying something? I just wanted to thank Keith for, Pierre for jumping in there and explaining the thing about what legal has sort of, read us the riot act about, what we can and can't talk about with the public, with respect to, HR issues and performance and things like that. And, just from a human perspective, if you can think about what it would do to the morale of an organization if, people were out and, board members were out in public, expressing our displeasure with any people on the staff, teachers or, principals or administrators, it just would not be healthy for the organization to have that level of dialogue. Keith,
All right. Elizabeth, you're good? Okay. So we'll move to Waukesha, and Board Member Jones, I do want to just emphasize, I know that Board Member Olympiadis typically goes a little bit longer, but if there's no real appetite for additional questions, then we can end the call a little bit, earlier. But on your call, as long as we have questions, we're here to entertain until the traditional time that.
Yeah, sure. I just want.
Okay, no worries. So we'll go Waukesha and then Anita.
Hey, I just wanted to say this, Keith, Pierre, Tamara. It would have helped a lot if the superintendent would have continued to come to the community and talk to the community and not have a lot of different scenarios happen where people are not happy. We did see the recent data where it shows a lot of kids are behind. One population that always get lost in the South is, the kids with special needs. And so I hope as we move through figuring things out that we make sure the CARES funds that Richard Belcher did the story on, we make sure that those kids who are severely behind, they get those resources. Because I can say I was on a Go Team meeting yesterday, and I heard a high school principal talk about how hard it is when you have high school kids reading on a second grade level. These are kids that's going to go out into the world. And we have a real serious literacy problem here. We have kids that have been passed along. We have kids with IEP. We have kids who cannot even attend school because there are not enough nurses. We really got to really start saying, hey, what's really happening here, which we already know what it is. Let's take these funds, stop creating positions, stop creating departments, and let's really put these funds into these children and make sure we can get them as close to possible as, you know, a 12th grader by the time they get out of school. Because to have kids that graduate each year, and we have talked about the graduation rate, but to have kids constantly graduating and they are not on or near grade level, you guys, is very disheartening. And I'm sorry, and I'll keep saying, but we can see the reflection in our city. So we really, you know, if the majority plan on keeping her around, they need to make sure that she's coming to the community and she's not showing up in no more photo ops, no more pictures and meetings with big name people. You need to come to the community and meet with the parents and the community members who will be affected by what does or does not happen to these kids. Alan, thank you for listening.
Thank you. This is a good time to stay involved with the funding issue because budget cycle is underway. So there will be public comment meetings, you know, all of those are open to the public. Please provide your comments. One of the things I asked in the budget commission meeting yesterday was, how are we, you know, crafting expenditure parameters to support the impacts of learning opportunity loss because of COVID? Like, are we prioritizing that in our budget? So now is the time to stay involved. When you hear of any meetings, currently they're having external student success funding formula meetings. And so they're trying to get as many people to come to those as possible. Gosh, I don't have the date. If you give me a minute, I'll look up the date of the next one because it's on the presentation that we had during the budget commission meeting. But please go, provide your feedback. One of the things that, you know, I have been advocating for is a change in the student success funding formula because we are not currently funding to support our standards of service. So that's one thing that's very important to me, especially when we talk about this cluster and, you know, schools being diminished in population, making sure that they have enough funding to make sure that they're going to have all of the specials and robust educational opportunities that they have with the larger student population. The budget cycle to fix that. And please stay involved and please support me. And yes.
Tamara, I most definitely will support you. I will say that for those meetings, to be fair, we only heard about one meeting. And I think maybe 3 had taken place. Maybe if, you know, like how they do with other meetings, maybe if they like put it on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, kind of let us know, give us a heads up. We can attend. You were right. I think I seen maybe about 6 or 7 people on the call. And I got to be fair too. A lot of people are at work. You know, we are working during the morning when these meetings are happening, but they can go back and listen to the recording and leave feedback for you guys, Pierre and Keith, so that, you know, it can be passed on. But we just got to know that this and this is taking place because it's on the website, but you will have to know every month I need to go to the website to see what this and this is going to take.
These were particularly hard to find. I mean, they're not on the board calendar. Not that the board needs to go to them, but we did hear from Ms. Bracken that they were trying to push them out through the Go teams, like the Go teams, all the Go teams were informed of the meetings. And I know Ms. Boatwright, who was on this call, has attended at least one of those meetings. And so if she could let people know how to find the information, I think that would be great.
But here's the thing, Tamara, the Go teams are mainly filled by the staff and the principal. I want to be very fair and truthful. I go to every meeting and they are having a very hard time getting the parents who are elected to come to those meetings. So unfortunately, the parents are not there to know this information to share with us. So we might have to ask the parent liaison to push that information out, but the Go team meeting is really solely just teachers, staff, and principal.
We need to change But yes, I agree. Let's find other ways to push that information out, because this is really critical. This is the time when we want to make sure that our dollars are going where they need to be going, and that we're funding schools first before we fund anything else. So.
All right, Ms. Sherelle, and then Dion.
Good morning. My question is, I remember when we had conversations surrounding Dr. Christoffen evaluation, including students with disability, and in terms of what their outcome looked like and what it was going to be like. So is that not a measuring tool for Dr. Herring as relates to her evaluation?
All of the subgroups are covered, in the evaluation tool. So if you've been following how we're talking about, raising literacy, from X to X and, from Y to Y, and all of the subgroups are parsed out within there. So it will be contained in that.
I'm asking because one of the things that Ms. Howell mentioned was the outcome as relates to test results that we received from class of 2022. And I keep harping on this because I saw also in your chat that the students in Detroit, they sued the district and was granted what they call literacy, entitled to literacy. So I'm just wondering, are we looking at, or do we have a plan for those students who graduated in 2022 and moving forward with literacy?
I remember you asking that question. It was at the cluster advisory team meeting, correct?
I've asked it at several, but that would be correct.
Okay, let me follow up on that because I remember taking note of that and asking the question. One sec. Are we tracking them? That was your question.
Not only tracking, but what are we planning on providing services for those students, additional services, given the fact that they were in the pandemic longer than any of the other classes?
I will get back to you with an answer on that. I have to ask. Okay.
Okay, and so we'll move to Dion, and then so Board Member Jones, just so you know, we're gonna go ahead and end the meeting at 11. And so if we have any additional questions, we ask that you just raise your hand. And so we'll hear from Dion now, and then we'll see, what the appetite is for additional questions around that time, and then we'll end at 11.
Hi, thanks again. I had to pop off for a second to get a phone call from my kid's school. A comment and then a question. I know that you're working on improved engagement, Tamara, as I believe one of your main pushes or advocacy across APS. At least in this cluster, we're going back to principals' coffees only in person and mostly during the school day. Is there any way that in regards to that engagement, you could advocate for hybrid principal coffees? Because, in terms of engagement, this is one of the only ones I couldn't make my elementary school. I found out last minute there was a middle school one, and next year I'm going to have kids at 3 schools. So I believe, as Waukesha said earlier, people can go back and listen to the recordings, or they can access them virtually, potentially live if they're not busy with work or busy with something else. But I really feel strongly that, and I think even research has shown, more parent engagement actually improves academic overall success for kids. And I just don't understand why we're peeling back those hybrid options and recording options, other than to not hold people accountable for things that are said or done. But it's just improves transparency, and there's less confusion and a better culture, in my opinion. So that would be number one. And it's a really big I'm a really big advocate of that. And I hope that we see that immediately pushed back. Just like you guys have added to the charter contract that Go teams, all their meetings need to be at least hybrid. And I greatly appreciate that the Board of Education added that to the new contract. My question, the timeline we've asked about in several meetings now for the superintendent's evaluation versus the superintendent's potential contract extension or not extension. We have been told a myriad of different things from different Board of Education members. Most recently at the meeting that you were on last week, where there were 3 Board of Education members, Jason Esteves clearly came out and said the evaluation is done in December. Any contract extension, if it happened, would be voted on in May, June. He said December, January for evaluation, May, June for contract potential renewal, if there was going to be one for a vote. However, last year, both happened in December. Is there something in a contract that says when these need to happen, or can this just happen willy-nilly when Board of Education decide it can happen?
So legal answered that question yesterday in the executive session. Contract renewal, we can take it up anytime legally. That was what I heard. Now, as far as like setting an expectation, one of the things that it did share was a proposed schedule. It was labeled confidential, so I can't share it with you until it becomes final and is shared. But that's what they're ironing out is, you know, when will the rubric be declared complete? You know, when will it be shared with the public, the rubric? When will the evaluation take place? And then when will the contract renewal discussion happen after that? So that we will be able to share that with you shortly, you know, by next month, I believe. But what I saw yesterday said confidential and I had to turn it back in. So I can't tell you.
Okay, so in the future, though, that would be stuck in stone for that point forward, like that is part of the contract? Is that what you're saying? Or is that just for this year?
This year.
Okay. Okay, and last question about that. I would assume it takes a certain amount of time to do a superintendent search. If you knew a contract was coming up or a superintendent was not moving on. Do you know what that ideal time is for a we know the ideal time to find teachers, right? When they usually fill roles. Do you know, is there like a hot part of the year that superintendents sign contracts or there is a standard? Does that make sense?
Does, but here I'm gonna like claim being a newbie. I don't know. This is not something I've done before, but I will remind you that Dr. Herring has a contract through summer of 2024. So
correct. Yes, I understand that. I would assume a year heads up, like for APS to find or some sort of a search committee. I know was done last time. I don't know how long that took. I don't know what that timeline was. I don't know if there is a hot time or not.
It is board member Mitchell on the call. I mean, she might have a recollection of that. Erica, are you on here?
I don't see her.
She was on.
Oh, she is. I do see her.
Yes, I'm here. In the past, what we did, because that was the first time I went through a superintendent search, we normally, well, last time was a different situation, and it was through COVID when we were shut down. So we started the superintendent search in March, I believe, and we had a finalist by, I think May. It was by May. So it takes about three to about 6 months. And that's if you're working with a good search firm and that you can get it down to the sole finalists. Normally superintendents try to sign their contracts, or if their contract's up, is normally through the spring, right there before the end of the school year. And then you try to have them retained before you go into the summer. So my experience has been with that gap between 3 to 6 months. That's if you start in January. But if we started in March last time with the search firm, but we had to go through a process to find the search firm first. And the board had to agree on what search firm we were going to use. So that took a process before we got to the interviewing stages of the candidates that applied for superintendent. So it's around that January, June timeframe, but it should take no more than 3 to 4 months.
That seems like a short amount of time to find such a big role.
Yes, it is.
I hope that's taken into consideration when we're thinking about these timelines for evaluation and potential contract renewal. And we're in almost an 18-month period now. So that's all.
All right. Any additional questions? The time is 10:53.
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out, for providing your feedback, for being honest. Honest feedback is very welcome. You don't fix anything that you don't acknowledge. So I just wanted to thank everybody, and do continue to reach out. My email is tamara.jones@allthatjunkatlanta.k12.ga.us. My phone number is 404-702-4901. That's my personal cell. So just call me anytime. Just feel free to reach out. Board member Mitchell is on here. All of your board members are accessible. Cynthia Briscoe Brown, myself, and Jason are all at-large reps. Anybody in the city, feel free to call us. But all of the board members are accessible. You can reach out to Erica, or anybody on the board. We all represent all of the city. So thank you again for taking your morning. If anybody else has anything to close us out with, go for it. Okay, hearing nothing, I will say thank you to Keith, and thank you to Pierre, and thank you to all the administration that's been on the call. Thank you, Travis. I know he had to hop off and do something with his kids. Diane Jacoby, all the people from engagement, and thank you so much for all the support. I really appreciate it. Enjoy your day and enjoy your weekend. Thank you.
All right. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.